let's talk about the future then, because I think they're trying to close it definitely. And if I were a betting man, I would put good money on Clinton becoming the next president at this point. But that doesn't mean that this story is over by any stretch of the imagination. Because in those first 13 minutes or whatever, he left so many tantalizing tidbits that it's inevitable that the Republicans are going to pick that up and they're going to run with it. And in fact, we've already seen that today. There was I saw a comment from one person in Congress saying that they want to ask for all of the evidence that Comey was looking at, and they want to take their own stab at it. And then another one said, also Republicans said that they're talking about creating a committee to look into this, kind of starting yesterday. They immediately want to get on this
right.
because they feel like this was a big miscarriage of justice. And you remember what happened with the Benghazi committee, and that went on for God knows how long, right? So, I'm sure that they would love to immediately pick up and make this a big election issue between now and November. And if you think about it, and you think about all the flaws that Donald Trump has, which are,
endless.
What has he got to really say to the undecided voter, vote for me? Well, probably his best argument is his crooked Hillary argument, right? And so I'm sure he's going to push this as much as he possibly can. And, there's that whole right-wing echo chamber. So this is, in a way, it's a huge breath of relief, I'm sure, for Clinton that there's no indictment. But, in another sense, this is just the end of one chapter and the beginning of another chapter. And you can also look, further down the road, and I've kind of felt this is going to happen regardless, because the legal system moves so slow in any case, whether there's an indictment or not. But you have to look and say, okay, if there's a Republican as the next president, what are they going to do? They're going to immediately try to get Clinton on this anyway, because they just hate the Clintons that much. Even if they're out of power, right? They've been gunning after the Clintons for 20 plus years, and that would be a good, kind of a three-ring circus for them to have the media devote a lot of attention to that. So, they might start impeachment hearings on day one if Trump wins. Whereas if Clinton wins, it's not that different, because pretty much everybody says that the odds of the Democrats retaking the House are very low. It'd have to be like a unprecedented
turnaround. Yeah, right.
So they'll still have, if they even have just one more person than the Democrats, and that means they control all the committees, and they can create the Clinton email committee, just like there was the Benghazi committee, and they can just milk this from now until eternity. And the difference between the Benghazi and this is that we saw from the final report of the Benghazi that there just wasn't a lot of there. And here, there is a lot of there.
That's right.
In fact, it's one of the really weird things that he said was, what Comey said was that, and I heard you talking a little bit about this before I got on the air, was that he was almost implying that if it was anybody else, he would have indicted, but because of Hillary Clinton, he's not. And here's the exact wording on this that he said. So, quote, "To be clear, this is not to suggest that in similar circumstances, a person who engaged in this activity would face no consequences."
Right, and when he said that, yeah.
Those individuals are often subject to security or administrative sanctions, but that is not what we are deciding.
That was one of the sentences. I mean, he was saying, to me, what he was saying was, now if it were somebody else, their ass would be in trouble. But because it's Clinton, she's not. I mean, that was the takeaway for me.
Yeah, and to be honest, there has been historically a real sensitivity on the part of the FBI to indict somebody just before an election. They sort of raise the bar higher because of the concern that that they're becoming a pawn in the election. They're very, very uncomfortable about doing anything in that sort of window, and they have special rules about that. So that may be part of what he's saying. But you know me, and you've seen my website. I mean, the evidence here is so strong that he should have recommended indictment no matter what. So I am very, very disappointed, because I had hopes that this political system has, the idea is these checks and balances. When something gets out of control, when things get too corrupt, that someone will ride in and save the day, right? And he was supposed to be the guy on the white horse to ride in and save the day, but it didn't happen. So I was hearing how very disappointed Kathy was, and saying it's fixed forever.
Nothing is going to change.
And sure, it's really frustrating, but there is this wild card that is literally never happened before in I think in the history of U.S. politics, and that is these outsiders who are probably completely from outside the United States, who may, through the power of computers and people putting all their data on computers, may have a tremendous amount of information. And think about if those 31,000 deleted emails that even the FBI didn't get their hands on, what if those were to be made public? Well, here's one thing. Sorry if I'm kind of on a roll, but
no, go ahead.
Is that interestingly that law that we talked about gross negligence, it actually has a clause that kicks in that says if quote-unquote unauthorized persons get the information, then that is a much more serious crime. The typical crime for the gross negligence statute, which is the 793 statute, is up to a year in prison. But if the unauthorized persons get their hands on some of that information, then that becomes a 10-year prison sentence, a felony.
Jesus.
Right? So if, and this is again, big if, but if Julian Assange or Guccifer2 or DC Leaks or who knows out there were to post tomorrow on some website some of the actual emails that have been deleted and previously unseen, that would be rock-solid proof that unauthorized persons got their hands on this material, and that would be an open and shut case for a 10-year felony sentence. So that's why when he was doing his talk, Comey devoted a section to the question of did anyone from outside the government actually get their hands on this, and he kind of gave this wishy-washy answer, which implied that was almost certainly true, but there was no way to really prove it, so you just have to, chalk that up as we'll never know. Whereas if somebody actually does have them and they step forward, then we know. And so I would think that at that point, it would be a real game changer, and they would have to all of a sudden reopen the idea about an indictment. And and that again, I'm not Nostradamus. I don't know what's happening, but I have seen some interesting things that would lead to me believe that could happen. In fact, just before I got on the phone with you, I went and I looked at the WikiLeaks website, and they have a tweet account, and they retweeted some of the comments that Julian Assange had made about having Clinton's emails, and then they also made a new comment. I don't know who's running their tweet account, but they said the following, which is, quote, although the press has concentrated on Hillary Clinton's email investigation, evidence of suspected criminality extends well beyond it, unquote. So, again, if you look at this Guccifer2 saying that he gave information to WikiLeaks, and then he was in the D.C. server for the past year, and Assange saying that he has not only these Clinton emails, but also Clinton Foundation stuff. I mean, who knows what could come out? There could be all kinds of different things that come out. So we just have to get our our big boxes of popcorn and wait to see what the next twist and turn will come out.
Here's something Assange said about her on June 23rd. Quote, she's an extremely ambitious liberal interventionist hawk and was a leading figure behind the destruction of Libya. If Hillary Clinton gets into office, it means endless war. She surrounds herself with people who don't really challenge her. He made that quote on, about 10 days ago.
Right, and he also made some cryptic quote with the night of the Brexit vote. He was on TV being interviewed, and they asked him about the Clinton emails, and he said, well, I don't want to scoop myself, and I'm not going to say anything more about that. But then he seemed to kind of, couldn't resist, and he made some vague comments saying that what would be coming would be historic and would change how the world thinks about politics. Mm-hmm. So, he's promising the moon at this point, and I don't know what's going to happen. But there have been these big WikiLeaks things in the past that have been hundreds of thousands of documents that have come out. So,
sure. Well, it's like, without getting too far into a poetic stance, we are, I do believe this, we being just about everybody, on the cusp of something that has never happened before. Here's a quote from Phyllis Venice, also on June 3rd. Quote, the problem that poses for people across this country is that the choice between the kind of chaos of Trump's policy that's so incredibly dangerous versus a very clear, very committed militaristic commitment to regime change and U.S. domination in the Hillary Clinton foreign policy is not much of a choice. And I think what she was saying there is that of these two, either one of them, and therefore both of them, are going to take this country into situations that we can't disengage from politically, militarily, and we're right teetering on an edge of pure political chaos. With what has happened so far and what Assange is about to reveal, if he is, and I think he is, the moronic ramblings of Trump. And here we had a candidate, both parties had a candidate, Bernie Sanders. Now, I'm not saying both parties, but you know what I mean. Somebody who has spent his entire political career, as far as I know, being a straight shooter, being honest, being focused on what people need, not what government needs. And we more or less said to him, "Go away. We don't want you, boy. You're too old. You're too young. You're too something."
I'm a bit, I don't know. I'd say maybe less jaded than that. I feel like that Clinton had so many advantages. She had advantages with especially the media coverage, and all the political players, pretty much without exception, senator, congressperson, governor, you name it, some of her top donors or some of the very top media outlets. It's very hard for Sanders to kind of swim against the tide. I think people said that she was the most favored candidate going into the primaries in the history of presidential politics, just with every single advantage she has. And she and Bill, through their machinations, mostly with their speeches in the Clinton Foundation, they earned a tidy $200 million. It was sort of like this elephant against the mouse kind of a competition, So the remarkable thing is that I think Sanders made so much headway against all of that. For him to win, of course, would have been great. I'm a big Sanders supporter, but he really had the deck stacked against him. And,
he did,
even in a more literal way, with the way that the different county and state officials were running the elections. I remember reading that in the Iowa caucus, which was so important, that was being run by a woman who had a license plate that said HRC 2016. she was supposed to be the neutral arbitrator, and she was like a big wig in the Hillary campaigns of the past, and couldn't possibly be more biased. And it was sort of like that all the way down through the DNC power structure. So, so it's frustrating. It really is that you see that can just through sheer muscle, that you can kind of muscle your way in. I think that's kind of what happened with Clinton. What do you think?
No, I absolutely agree. I don't think that Hillary Clinton is. What did Obama say today when he was in North Carolina with her? That she is the most of any man, any woman, whoever ran for president, the most qualified. And when I heard that, I thought, what are you talking about? I can't think of anything other than her NGO work where she worked for the betterment of girls and women around the planet, which I guess she did. That's what I've read. But I can't think of anything that was a politically astute move or was a move that would benefit this country or the country that may have been involved. I don't see how anyone sees Hillary Clinton as the most competent candidate ever to run for president, which is what Obama said today. I don't know if you got that, but that's what he said.
Well, right. I mean, if you look at, say, her time as Secretary of State, free of all this email stuff, and you compare it to Kerry, and Kerry actually did a few things like the deal with Iran,
right?
Avoiding war with Syria and so forth, and what are the accomplishments that Hillary Clinton could point to? The main one, quote unquote, accomplishment would be the Libya civil war, the overturning of Gaddafi, which ended up being just a complete disaster.
Oh.
That country is turning into another Somalia right
Mm-hmm.
now.
It is.
And even Obama said that's his biggest regret of his presidency is what happened there.
Mm-hmm.
So that was going to be like her sort of crown jewel of her big accomplishment. And so we don't really see a lot there. And I have these very serious concerns, which I talked to you last time I was on about what will happen if she becomes president, because the past is a predictor of the future, and we can see her behavior. Now, I'm sure there's some good things that, and I wouldn't fault anybody if they want to vote for Hillary Clinton just because of these things, like the fact that you would get some, hopefully some liberal Supreme Court nominees put in there. But you get these other things like, this incredible personal corruption that has gone on with the Clinton Foundation, with all the quid pro quo, with all the conflict of interest, with them personally becoming these multi-millionaires. Mm-hmm. We've seen this happen in third world countries where people become even president or prime minister or whatever, and they end up gaining personally a huge amount of money. And that
Right.
is what we've seen that the Clintons have basically done for the last 20 years or so. So why would they stop when they've already said that they would not? That Bill Clinton said I'm not going to distance myself from the Clinton Foundation if my wife becomes president. Mm-hmm. And then we see all this behavior that is really criminal behavior of again, I mean, if you really look at what Comey said for most of his talk, all these things that she did, she was sending around not just top secret, but above top secret information in the most insecure way imaginable. I mean, it's like Keystone Cops type stuff. Do you really want this person to be the next president of the United States? But then, we're stuck, because then the other choice is Trump.
It's Trump. I know. Well, I don't know. It's just maddening. Hey, Paul, I'm going to have to leave it there. I hope you'll stay in touch with us because, like you pointed out, this is not the end of this story. I really don't think it is, and it could get pretty gamey in the next several weeks. Because I think there's going to be a real concentrated effort now, a political effort, even more so than has occurred here recently, to get her, to destroy her politically, as you pointed out, with a Republican-controlled House. They can do anything they want. They can start investigation upon investigation, and I think it's going to become a real horror show. So let's.
I've just to interrupt a little bit. I've talked to some people who, I hear scuttlebutt of people who talk to people, and a lot of people think that the Republicans are holding back, that they have more damning information, maybe not the emails, but for instance, the Clinton
the foundation
stuff. That why should they bring that out now? Because they want to be sure that they're running against Hillary Clinton. She's got these incredible negative numbers on honesty and trustworthiness and so forth. If the Democrats were to pull some switcheroo and put in Sanders or Joe Biden or whoever it may be, then they would have a much tougher road, you would assume. So they may be waiting until after the convention, and then they're going to start dropping these different stories. And and they've been working on opposition research probably since she was the first lady, and it's going to get pretty ugly, I imagine.
I think it is. Well, Paul, good to talk to you tonight, and please stay in touch, because I have a feeling we're going to be chatting again.
Okay, but before I go, one last thing.
Sure.
So I just want to remind all the listeners out there that we do have this website, and the website address is Thompson Timeline, and it's THOMPSON. There's a P in there, ThompsonTimeline.com. And it just so happens that the timing is so unfortunate that as I'm speaking to you, we're in the middle of doing a big revamp, and I think the site might be down at this very moment, but it should be back up in a few hours. So for the people who really want to get the full scoop out of this, and I think you should, because this is not over. This is going to be, think about how long we've been hearing about Benghazi. This is going to be like that for probably the next 2-3 years. So if you want to get educated on this, I highly recommend you go to our website, and it's got everything you need to know and then some.
ThompsonTimeline.com.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Paul, thanks a lot. I appreciate everything you had to say.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
Okay, you take care.
Okay, great. Bye.
All right, bye-bye.